Bruno Fernandez de Souza, the killer goalkeeper. Bruno was once a star on the pitch, a truly talented and charismatic goalkeeper who even captained one of Brazil's biggest clubs, Flamengo. His future seemed limitless, with many believing he was destined for the national team and international stardom. But his name, once celebrated in stadiums across the country, is now forever linked to one of the most monstrous crimes in the history of sports. It's a story that proves fame and talent can hide a truly sinister darkness, and how a single, terrible choice can spiral a life completely out of control. Bruno's downfall began with a secret that threatened his pristine public image. He had a child with a former lover, a model named Eliza Samudio. When Eliza demanded child support, Bruno didn't just refuse, he allegedly orchestrated her kidnapping, torture, and murder to silence her permanently. The details of the crime are truly the stuff of nightmares. Eliza's body was never found. According to reports, it was dismembered and fed to dogs. A gruesome act intended to erase all evidence. The sheer depravity of the act shocked a nation that had once adored him. The court case revealed the chilling extent of Bruno's depravity and the cold-blooded nature of his actions. Witnesses, including his own cousin and a former police officer, confessed to their roles, painting a picture of a man consumed by a desire to cover his tracks at any cost. We learned he had tried to force Eliza to take abortion pills before the murder, and that his co-conspirators had strangled her before disposing of her remains. In a bizarre and sickening twist, Bruno even took custody of their son after Eliza's disappearance, acting like a caring father while knowing the horrific truth of what had happened to the boy's mother. In 2013, Bruno was found guilty and sentenced to 22 years in prison for homicide, kidnapping, and the concealment of a body. But the story took another shocking turn in 2017 when he was released on parole and signed a contract to play football again after serving just 7 years. The decision sparked widespread outrage from fans, politicians, and women's rights groups, with many viewing his return to the sport as a betrayal of justice. Ultimately, the pressure was too great, and his comeback was short-lived. Bruno went from a celebrated hero of the beautiful game to a convicted murderer. His legacy serves as a grim and powerful reminder that a person's talent on the field means absolutely nothing without humanity off it. George Best, the alcoholic genius who drank himself to death. George Best was football's first true rock star, a Manchester United legend, a winner of the European Cup, and a Ballon d'Or recipient at just 22 years old. He had the world at his feet. But as the fame grew, so did his demons, and his crippling addiction to alcohol would ultimately destroy everything he had built. This is the story of a genius who drank himself into the grave. Best's downfall was a slow-motion car crash that played out in public for decades. The charming, witty man who captivated millions with his on-field magic and off-field charisma became a prisoner of his addiction. His life became a blur of booze-fueled incidents. There were DUIs, public meltdowns, and a history of domestic violence that would have been a scandal in any era. In 1984, the star who once graced the cover of magazines found himself spending 3 months in prison for assaulting a police officer and drunk driving, a shocking low for a man once adored by millions. His 2 ex-wives, Angie and Alex, later spoke out about the abuse they suffered, painting a heartbreaking picture of a man who was as destructive at home as he was dazzling on the pitch. His reckless behaviour also led to him being banned from driving for years, a constant consequence of his dangerous lifestyle. The sheer scale of his self-destruction is almost unbelievable. There's the famous story about how he once downed an entire bottle of champagne just before a crucial game, and still managed to score. He would spend his vast wealth on fast cars and beautiful women, leading to one of his most famous and tragic quotes: "I spent a lot of money on booze, birds, and fast cars. The rest I just squandered." In 2002, in a final desperate attempt to save his life, he received a liver transplant. It was a second chance that most people would cherish. But for Best, the addiction was too powerful to break. He kept drinking, a devastating choice that sealed his fate. The final, heartbreaking image is of him in a hospital bed, a picture of his ravaged body published with his permission, alongside his final, haunting words: "Don't die like me." It was his last, desperate plea to others not to follow his path. George Best's story is the ultimate cautionary tale of wasted genius. His career, cut short by his behaviour, saw him leave Manchester United at just 27. He would play for a dozen more clubs in a nomadic career that saw his talent flash only sporadically. But the real tragedy wasn't the goals he stopped scoring, it was the life he stopped living. He passed away at the age of 59 from alcohol-related organ failure, a stark and brutal end to a life that promised so much. The man who was once El Beetle and a symbol of the swinging 60s died alone in a hospital bed. Lee Hughes, the hit-and-run killer. Lee Hughes was a prolific striker, a fan favourite known for his powerful shots and goal-scoring instincts for clubs like West Brom and Coventry City. He was the kind of player whose name you'd hear chanted from the terraces, a celebrated figure in the game. But on a dark night in 2003, his legacy was permanently stained when he killed a man in a drunk driving crash, and then committed the cowardice of fleeing the scene, leaving a father of 4 to die. The downfall of Lee Hughes wasn't a slow, tragic spiral like others. It was a sudden, devastating event that revealed a shocking lack of character. He had been drinking and speeding with 3 friends in his brand new Mercedes E after a night out. While on a country road, he lost control and smashed head-on into a Renault Scenic. The force of the impact was so great that it killed the driver of the other car, 56-year-old Douglas Graham, instantly. His wife, Maureen, was also severely injured. But instead of staying to help, Hughes and his passengers fled the scene, vanishing into the night and leaving the mangled wreckage and their victims behind. The shocking details of the aftermath exposed the cold-blooded nature of his actions. In the following days, a massive manhunt was launched for the driver of the Mercedes. Police eventually found Hughes hiding at his mansion, a stark contrast to the destruction he had left on the road. The subsequent investigation revealed that his blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit at the time of the crash. He later tried to claim that he had been a passenger and had fled out of shock, but the evidence and witness testimonies proved otherwise. His actions weren't a moment of panic. They were a deliberate attempt to evade responsibility for the life he had taken. The consequences for Hughes were severe, but to some, not severe enough. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for causing death by dangerous driving. He was released after serving half of his sentence, but unlike with Adam Johnson, the English Football Association did not impose a permanent ban. This allowed him to return to football in 2007 with Oldham Athletic, and he continued playing in the lower leagues for over a decade. While some clubs were willing to give him a second chance on the field, the fans never truly forgave him. He was regularly met with jeers and chants, reminding him of the crime, a constant reminder of the life he destroyed. He was often booed at grounds across the country, with rival fans making it clear that they would never forget what he did. His return was a source of division, highlighting the complex relationship between a player's talent and their moral failings. Lee Hughes scored goals for a living, but his biggest crime was running from the life he destroyed. His legacy is one of a career defined by a single, catastrophic night of recklessness, and the cowardly choice that followed it. It's a powerful and grim reminder that fame and talent don't offer protection from the consequences of our actions, and that a single act of selfishness can leave a permanent scar on a community and on a man's reputation. Nizar Trabelsi, the terrorist footballer. Nizar Trabelsi was a Tunisian international, a footballer who played for clubs in Germany, and a man who, at one point, had the potential to represent his country on a global stage. But his career took a dark and horrifying turn when he abandoned the sport to join one of the world's most feared terrorist organisations. Trabelsi didn't just end his career, he turned his back on the game and everything it stood for, swapping scoring goals for plotting mass murder. After a playing career that saw him play in Germany with Fortuna Düsseldorf, Trabelsi found himself on a much darker path. He became radicalised and travelled to Afghanistan, where he trained in an Al-Qaeda camp. He was later arrested in Germany and found to be planning a suicide attack on a NATO airbase in Belgium. His mission was to blow himself up and, in the process, kill as many people as possible. The crime was a complete and utter betrayal of the sport and its values. Football is a game meant to unite people, but Trabelsi had committed himself to a cause of division and destruction. His actions were a complete rejection of the teamwork, fair play, and sportsmanship that he had once been a part of. The German court found him guilty and sentenced him to 10 years in prison in 2003. Trabelsi was the ultimate traitor to the game. He swapped the joy of scoring goals for the evil of plotting murders. His story serves as a chilling reminder that a person's path can take a truly terrifying turn, and that some betrayals are far more profound than just a transfer to a rival team. Adam Johnson. Adam Johnson was a Premier League star, a supremely talented winger who played for giants like Manchester City and Sunderland. With his blistering pace and a dangerous left foot, he won the Premier League title and was a regular England international. He had the kind of career most young footballers only dream of, with a six-figure weekly salary and a life of fame and luxury. But in 2016, his pristine public image was shattered, and he was exposed as a predator whose life of privilege had made him believe he was untouchable. Johnson's downfall began with a betrayal of trust that shocked the nation. He had been grooming a 15-year-old fan, exchanging a series of increasingly explicit and manipulative text messages with her over several weeks. He would use his celebrity to his advantage, messaging a besotted teenager who was thrilled to be in contact with her hero. The digital trail, which he desperately tried to have her delete, would become the damning evidence against him. The relationship culminated in a secret meeting in his car. When the police closed in, Johnson's first instinct was to lie to his club, his partner, and the public, feigning innocence as he continued to play football while on bail. The victim's family and a shocked public watched as Johnson, a Premier League player, denied any wrongdoing, putting the young girl through the trauma of a full trial. The trial revealed the truly disturbing details of his calculated behaviour. The victim, showing immense courage, bravely took the stand, her testimony and the manipulative text messages she had saved forming the core of the prosecution's case. She recounted how the star had initiated and controlled the conversations, and how he had knowingly abused his power and fame to pursue a minor. What made this case even more scandalous was the revelation that Sunderland, his club at the time, continued to play him even after he had been charged with serious crimes. It wasn't until a national outcry, with sponsors threatening to pull out and fans expressing their disgust, that the club finally terminated his contract, but only on the first day of his trial, after he changed his plea to guilty on some of the charges. The consequences for Adam Johnson were swift and severe. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for sexual activity with a child and grooming. After serving 3 years, he was released, but his freedom was a far cry from the life he once had. The English Football Association issued a lifetime ban, ensuring he could never return to the professional game he so brazenly disgraced. Johnson now lives in complete anonymity, a pariah despised by fans and reviled by the public. He is a cautionary figure, a symbol of how celebrity and entitlement can lead to a complete moral collapse. Adam Johnson threw away a £60,000 a week career, the respect of a nation, and his freedom, all for a crime that made him a national disgrace. He went from a hero on the pitch to an outcast in society, a fate he brought entirely upon himself. Marlon King, the repeat offender. Marlon King was a talented and powerful striker, a player known for scoring important goals for teams like Watford, Wigan and Birmingham. He had a physicality and a presence on the field that made him a force to be reckoned with. But as fans and club owners would discover to their dismay, his talent was rivaled only by his dangerous and destructive behaviour off the pitch. His rap sheet, a long list of violent and dishonest crimes, was far longer than his career highlights, and it ultimately destroyed every chance he was given. King's downfall wasn't a single mistake, but a pattern of escalating violence and lawlessness that began long before he became a household name. His criminal history began in his teenage years and continued throughout his career. In 2002, he was convicted and briefly jailed for stealing a teammate's wallet, an act of sheer dishonesty that should have served as an early warning sign. But it was in the later years that his violence against women came to define him. In 2008, he was arrested for a truly shocking incident in a London nightclub, where he sexually assaulted a young woman and punched her so hard he broke her nose. A year later, while on bail for that very same crime, he was convicted of assaulting another woman. It was clear that King saw himself as above the law, a dangerous sense of entitlement fueled by his celebrity. The shocking details of his behaviour and the reactions of the football world are particularly revealing. During the trial for the nightclub assault, King lied and claimed it was a case of mistaken identity, even bringing his wife and brother to testify in a desperate attempt to cover his tracks. The jury, however, saw right through it and convicted him. What makes this story even more incredible is that some clubs, desperate for his talent, still gave him chances. Wigan, for example, signed him even while he was on bail, a decision that drew intense criticism. After he was released from prison, he signed for Coventry City and then Birmingham City, but fans at every club knew his history, and his presence often caused revolt. Rival fans would chant about his past crimes, and many of his own supporters were disgusted. The protests eventually became too loud to ignore. The consequences for Marlon King were a mix of both prison sentences and a public shaming from which he would never recover. He served time in jail for multiple offences, including the 18-month sentence for sexual assault and another 18-month sentence for a separate dangerous driving charge in 2014. While the football authorities never officially banned him, he was effectively blacklisted by the sport due to widespread fan protests and his toxic reputation. Clubs learned that the public backlash was simply not worth the goals he might score. Today, he is a forgotten figure in the world of football, having faded into obscurity, and now reportedly working as a DJ, a far cry from the Premier League stadiums he once commanded. Marlon King had a talent that could have made him a great, but his fists and his lies destroyed every chance he got. His career is a powerful and ugly reminder that no amount of skill can hide a criminal heart, and that eventually, a person's true character will always catch up with them. Ronaldinho, the fake passport king. Ronaldinho was a Ballon d'Or winner, a World Cup champion, and a global icon whose smile and Samba-style football captured the hearts of millions. His magical skills made him one of the most beloved players of his generation, but after his career on the pitch ended, his life took a bizarre and perplexing turn that landed the former superstar in a Paraguayan prison for 5 months. The crime itself was something straight out of a strange movie. In 2020, Ronaldinho and his brother, Roberto, were arrested in Paraguay for entering the country using fake passports. They were reportedly there to promote a children's charity and a new casino, but their false documents, which identified them as Paraguayan citizens, raised immediate red flags with immigration authorities. What followed was a legal battle that left the world baffled, as the brothers insisted they had no knowledge the passports were fake and were simply given them by a local businessman. The Paraguayan government, however, was not convinced. The entire situation was filled with surreal details that only Ronaldinho could have been a part of. After being denied bail, the former football king was sent to a maximum security prison. But even behind bars, his charisma shone through. He reportedly played football with inmates and guards, and in a truly bizarre twist, he even organised a prison futsal tournament. The prize? A 16 kilogram suckling pig. He passed the time signing autographs and posing for photos with fellow inmates, making the best of a truly strange situation. He was later moved to house arrest in a luxury hotel after his lawyers paid a hefty bail. The consequences of his strange crime were more about embarrassment and reputation damage than a lengthy prison sentence. He was eventually released from prison and placed on house arrest after a total of 171 days in custody. While the incident didn't destroy his legacy as a footballer, fans still adore him for his on-field magic. It certainly tarnished his reputation. The image of the smiling superstar in a mugshot wearing a prison jersey was a shocking sight that highlighted a fall from grace. It was a moment that showed the world that even global icons are not above the law. Ronaldinho dazzled on the pitch with tricks no one expected, but his fake passport was the one trick that backfired spectacularly. It's a surreal and unforgettable story about how a football icon's life after the game can be even stranger than his career. Joey Barton. Joey Barton was a hardman midfielder, a Premier League player known for his tenacity, aggression, and an unfiltered mouth. He was a talented footballer who played for major clubs like Manchester City, Newcastle, and Queen's Park Rangers. But his volatile temper and a long history of violent incidents off the pitch defined his career more than his skills on it. He seemed to court trouble, and his life became a recurring cycle of violent outbursts, followed by public apologies that few believed. His rap sheet is a catalogue of senseless violence. In 2004, at a Manchester City Christmas party, he put out a lit cigar in the eye of a 19-year-old youth player, a horrifying and vindictive act that resulted in a club fine of £60,000. Just a year later, during a pre-season tour in Thailand, he was sent home after assaulting a 15-year-old Everton fan, but his most significant criminal act came in 2007. After a training ground altercation with teammate Ousmane Darbo, Barton repeatedly punched him, leaving Darbo unconscious with a suspected detached retina. He was later given a 4-month suspended sentence for that vicious attack. However, his most public and destructive moment came in December of that same year. While on a night out in Liverpool, he got into a bar brawl, repeatedly punching a man in a vicious and cowardly attack that left the victim with broken teeth. He was also charged with hitting a 16-year-old. This time, there was no escaping the consequences. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison and served 74 days, an undeniable low for a Premier League footballer. The sheer irony of his post-football career is breathtaking. After a playing career filled with multiple violent conduct charges from the FA, a 12-match ban for attacking 3 players in one game, and a 6-month jail sentence, he transitioned into a new role. Today, Joey Barton works as a football pundit, a platform from which he regularly criticises players for a lack of discipline, poor behaviour, and a weak mentality. The man who was once a walking scandal now sits in judgment of others. It's a level of hypocrisy that is almost hard to comprehend. The consequences of his behaviour weren't limited to a few jail stints and fines. In 2017, he was banned from football for 18 months after admitting to an FA charge related to betting fraud, effectively ending his playing career. He has since continued to be a lightning rod for controversy, using social media to air his often misogynistic and bigoted views, leading to new legal battles and charges. Joey Barton was a talented player whose mouth and fists ran faster than his conscience. His legacy is not one of goals or trophies, but of a cautionary tale about how anger and a complete lack of self-control can overshadow any talent. His story is a powerful reminder that while a person can get a second chance, they don't always deserve one, especially when they refuse to learn from their mistakes. Brano. Brano was a highly touted Brazilian defender, a young talent signed by Bayern Munich, who many believed was on the path to stardom. He was big, strong, and confident on the pitch, but off it, he struggled with the pressures of fame, injury, and a new life in a foreign country. His promising career came to a sudden and tragic end when he committed a crime that was both destructive and deeply sad. He set fire to his own home. In 2011, Brano, then 21, was recovering from a serious knee injury that had kept him off the pitch for months. Alone and reportedly suffering from depression, he had a mental breakdown that culminated in him dousing his €2.5 million villa with gasoline and setting it ablaze. The fire completely destroyed the home and everything in it, a shocking act of self-destruction. In a later court appearance, he would claim that voices told him to do it, revealing the extent of his mental anguish and the severe struggles he was facing behind closed doors. The crime was a tragic mix of personal despair and severe consequences. The German court sentenced him to 3 years and 9 months in prison for aggravated arson, a stark and brutal end to a career that was once so full of hope. He was released early for good behaviour after serving a little over 2 years, but his professional football career was over. The player, who was once a key part of Bayern Munich's future, was now an ex-convict with a reputation in ruins. Brano's career went up in flames, literally. His story is a heartbreaking reminder of the immense pressures young players face and the profound isolation that can come with fame and injury. It's a tale of how a mental health crisis can destroy not just a person's life, but everything they've ever worked for. Tony Adams, the recovering alcoholic. Tony Adams was a legend, a one-club man who captained Arsenal and England, leading his teams to historic victories. Known as Mr. Arsenal, he was a colossal figure on the pitch, a no-nonsense defender whose talent and leadership were undeniable. But behind the scenes, his life was a secret battle with a powerful addiction that nearly cost him everything. Adams's story is one of a spectacular rise, a brutal downfall, and ultimately a triumphant recovery. The public first got a glimpse of his private struggles in 1990, when Adams, just 23, was jailed for 4 months for drunk driving. He had crashed his car in Southend, and tests showed he was over 4 times the legal alcohol limit. The incident was a national scandal, a shocking betrayal from the man who was meant to be a role model. But this was only the beginning. His addiction worsened, and he spent years caught in a vicious cycle of drinking and destructive behaviour, all while maintaining his professional life. He would show up to training hungover, a shadow of the great player he was meant to be, and his life spiralled further out of control. It wasn't until 1996 that Adams finally reached rock bottom and decided to get sober. The road to recovery was not easy, but it was a testament to his strength and determination. He went public with his alcoholism, an act of immense bravery in a time when mental health and addiction were rarely discussed in sports. His recovery became part of his identity. He founded the Sporting Chance Clinic, a charity dedicated to helping athletes with addiction and mental health issues. He became a beacon of hope for others, a living example that recovery is possible. Adams didn't just conquer his addiction, he used his experience to help others in the very world that had so much pressure. Tony Adams conquered his demons, but not before they almost killed him. His story is a powerful reminder that heroes can fall, but they can also get back up and find a new purpose. It's a testament to the fact that strength on the pitch doesn't always translate to strength off it, but it's the strength to ask for help that ultimately defines a person's legacy. He went from a drunk driving offender to a celebrated addiction counsellor, and his life now serves as a blueprint for recovery and hope.